Welcome, my name is Andrew Castle, and it is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers for this 10 o'clock session. And Robert told me to take my time but hurry, so I'm going to try to do both. Rob Akers is a 26-year veteran educator. Mr. Akers most recently served as the head principal of Woodford County High School and chaired the Kentucky Education Professional Standards Board. Presently, Rob is the Associate Commissioner of the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness at the Kentucky Department of Education, which oversees accreditation of educator preparation providers and the certification of Kentucky educators. Dr. Marty Park is the Chief Digital Officer with the Kentucky Department of Education, where he focuses on strategic implementations and experience design of emerging technologies for learning. He previously served as a Regional Education Technology Leader for the department, and prior to that, was the Chief Information Officer and District Technology Coordinator for one of Kentucky's largest school districts. Park also consults on federal and state programs and is a frequent speaker at international, national, and statewide events. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Kentucky in Lexington and Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky, and an Innovation Fellow for the Digital Learning Design Lab. Robin Hebert leads the Division of Educator Preparation, Assessment, and Internship in the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness, which oversees educator preparation program approval, accreditation, the state's pipeline recruitment and retention efforts for a diverse, well-qualified, and fully credentialed educator workforce, and Kentucky's plan for equitable access to effective educators. Robin has served over 25 years in education in various roles, such as grant writer and coordinator, secondary curriculum coordinator, English language arts content specialist, state middle school reading consultant, and English language arts teacher, grades 6 through 12. Her most recent focus for professional growth has been to develop into a leader who empowers and inspires others towards results everyone can be proud of. In addition to her work as an educator, Robin has a full family and heart. Please welcome our three speakers.
Good morning, I'm Rob Akers. I'm glad to be with you today. Robin Hebert could not be with us today, so I will be both Rob and Robin today, much to her dismay. But we're glad to have some time to talk with you and share a little bit about competency-based professional learning in Kentucky. It's a great time of change in Kentucky, and when I say a great time, I mean there's some great opportunities that we're going to get to talk about today for our educators that we're planning on striking while the iron's hot. So Marty Park, my colleague over here, came up with he did all the pretty work on the PowerPoint, and he's the tech guy. He's the brains of the operation. But I'll let him introduce himself real quick and let him introduce his title for this.
Yeah, so Andrew, that was a great welcome. Marty Park, super glad to be with you today. Actually, I've had the opportunity to be at this national and annual convening since it started. And originally we launched some ideas, and now we're at the point of executing on those ideas. So really excited to share some of that. And I think we really want to get this hashtag really pushing forward of micro-credential badgification. I think if we just throw it all together, we can have some fun with it. But Robert, I think you introduced that well, and just a lot of ideas coming together. So thank you, Rob.
We really appreciate the opportunity to share with you today some things we're doing at the department and some things we're going to be pushing out statewide through the Education Professional Standards Board. This is really a time that we're breaking down some brick walls and opening some opportunities that teachers have really never had before. And we'll take you right to it. So let me give you a little history. Prior to August 2018, in Kentucky, to recertify, you had to have a master's degree or a rank 2, which the language changed to some years ago. And that was all done with the intent of increasing teacher effectiveness. Kentucky was, however, one of the last states to drop that requirement. We were one of about 3 states when we dropped or we waived the requirement. We did not say you can't get a master's anymore. That was an urban myth out there. We never said people couldn't get masters anymore. But the research didn't support that rank 2 was making a difference in the classroom for our students. What it was doing was it was creating a lot of debt on our teachers, and it was driving some folks out of the profession. It was a barrier and a gatekeeper. So our districts and our teachers asked for relief. You had teachers coming out of college with record debt. Teacher salaries were not commensurate to the amount of increase of tuition, so they were having a hard time paying those back, and then were expected to start into a master's program within 5 years and take on more debt. So that was driving this churn of our teachers out of the classroom. In addition, our remote areas were losing teachers to surrounding states who did not have this requirement. In addition, in the remote areas, we couldn't get anybody to come over to us because of the requirement. So, again, in August of 2018, our Education Professional Standards Board voted to waive that requirement. So, we've been working on that regulation for about 9 months now, and happy to share some of the progress that we've made on that. All right, so just to kind of share some potential pros and cons that we're dealing with out there, we feel like it's an opportunity for greater recruitment and retention of teachers. We can get them in, we can, without the fear of having to accumulate more debt and to go back to school right away. That whole debt thing is just a huge issue. We found out through KIA that the average graduate in Kentucky carries about $17,000 worth of debt. And if that's an average, you can only imagine what the high side looks like. So, we believe that only the true believers are going to pursue higher degrees. In the past, we had programs flooded with not people who are really looking to have to want to improve themselves. So we had especially some principal programs where people who had no intention of ever becoming a principal were filling seats. And so it looked like we had an inflated pool of candidates, when in reality, we only had, like I said, some true believers out there who really wanted to move into leadership. And the same thing worked across the board with other programs. So here are some of the cons that are out there. There's a belief that teachers won't pursue advanced learning. And that's an issue, because we do want our teachers and all of our educators to be bought into this continuous improvement mindset. There's a concern that EPPs might have to close some programs. And there's the perception that teachers won't be required to develop a deeper content knowledge to keep pushing forward. So we're going to try to address most of those things as we go through our presentation. So we're really working on changing how we think about relicensure and professional learning, and we'll dip into both of those here as we move on.
So as we dip into those, we wanted to just do just a quick detour and look at some vocabulary that we're using as we are in development mode for some of our programs. I'm a huge fan of instructional design and learning design. I'm a big believer that teaching doesn't always equal learning. That's a Richard Mayer belief that I've subscribed to. I'm also a big believer that liking doesn't always equal learning. And so just because we like something doesn't necessarily mean that we're learning from it. And so as we dip into and think about new designs, and we think about the experiences that we are creating, whether it's professional learning or whether it's other programmatic spaces, we wanted to just dive real quickly, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this morning, but it's a core belief of ours as we are designing. We are right now in the process of rolling out brand new Kentucky academic standards. And so these are some of the pieces that we're pulling in as we're thinking about how our teachers are learning to use standards, one. And then also, as we look at district and school leadership models, here are some core beliefs that we are pulling in. And so it's so awesome that Mary Ann launched this morning and had us think about things that we have learned to do recently. And 3 out of 4 people, and I know at our table it was 4 out of 4, leveraged digital content or a digital experience to gain those skills or to gain that knowledge. And so we want to definitely pull that in and harness that. And so we think about 2 different designs, and it's a both and for us. It's not a one or the other, so synchronous learning. So we're at the same time, same place doing that thing. And then asynchronous, on demand. When I need it, I can go get it. Mary Ann mentioned that. Robert mentioned that as well earlier this morning. So just some models that we are developing on, and I know you are too. I see a lot of friendly faces in the room, and especially from Kentucky, but also other states that I've worked with in the past. And there's some models that we are really developing on, and so I like to call this the digital sermon, right? So an example is where we can get some digital content together, and this is an example from Jefferson County Public Schools, and a district leader who puts content together so that teachers and communities can learn all together. This is on demand. This is that digital sermon. I'm getting up and I'm putting together a digital experience so that you can learn along with me. Next, what I like to call the digital relay race. Okay, so the idea that I can produce some digital content. In this case, this is an example in Kentucky. We have a lot of fun activity around what we call KY Go Digital. I see some KY Go Digital fans in the room right now, and leaders. And so the idea that when we need to, we can pull a model together where we pass the baton. So I lead an event or I lead an experience, and then I pass the baton over to Whitney, who leads an event or leads an experience. That's that digital relay race that we believe matters. Now this is an experiment. So this is what I like to call the digital matrix. Does anybody get the visuals here? Yes. So I've failed in some large events where folks are like, I don't get it. So the matrix, right? So this is the idea where we can put a matrix together just like today, but in a digital experience. And that can be synchronous and asynchronous altogether. That's just one example. The digital office hours. We're doing this at the Kentucky Department of Education, where we are launching a new program, and we want to provide an experience for folks to join us, through digital means, whether that's call in or WebEx in or Google Meet Hangouts in or Zoom in. Closely related is what we call the Digital Genius Bar. And this is the opportunity for us to set a time that we can help folks leverage some of our geniuses. And this is just an example of some of our leaders across the state that are holding what we would call a Digital Genius Bar. This is one that I'm really excited about. And again, this is just a detour model on vocabulary that all wraps together, that we'll pull it all together here. But I'm really excited about digital co-teaching. It's just co-teaching at its core. It's the opportunity for me as a new teacher to be able to open the window into Jody's classroom, where she's a master teacher, and I can learn directly from her with low cost or no cost. The technology, we have it. In Kentucky, all of our schools are connected with the highest speed fiber internet, with the highest quality, right? And so we can do this today at no cost. And Jody can also join my classroom digitally and also give me live feedback if I need it. She can tell me live to go over and really explore a questioning technique that I may not have had as a new teacher or an inexperienced teacher. And so that's our digital co-teaching model. And then finally, we can blend all those together. We're going to pull all of those models together, and we're going to blend them and produce some really high quality experiences. The point here for us is, from an asynchronous model, for us to really employ the power of pause, be able to capture that learning and be able to pause it. And then I'm a huge fan of mixtapes. Anybody in the room with me? Yeah. By the way, I did find a mixtape that I made for my wife back in middle school. It's super cool. I need to be able to rewind that learning, okay? I got to be able to rewind the learning and not lose it forever. And this, for me, is when we think about developing these models, this is just super important. Where we can expose, we can get content out, and we can launch new ideas and new content. We can do that all day long. We can't really gauge quality that way. We can a little bit, but not with high fidelity. We can enact and get to some coaching, which is next step, and we have to employ our coaching techniques. But then finally, checking for understanding is just vital. We have to know whether we're learning from each other or not. And so as we develop these models, we want to make sure we have that.
Thank you, Marty. As you can tell, Marty knows his work really well, and there's so many things to say about the mixtape that I'll share later. But we've been talking through this presentation, Marty and Robin and I, and talking about trying to figure out some sort of a linear progression with the micro-credentials and how they fit, and we couldn't come up with it. And so what we came up with was this web of how the use of micro-credentials can push on all these different areas, from standalone courses. Maybe it's just picking up one little strand of content. Maybe it's for a teacher around classroom management. Maybe they've really got the planning and the assessment and all of these other things down, but they can't control the kids. And so they just need that little push to be able to build that competency. It doesn't need to be a full stack of credentials to go through to get that. We look at competency and mastery, proficiency. That way for a teacher to, as Marty called it in our title, to level up in their ability to be able to develop those skills a little bit more. The computer science push is huge for us in Kentucky right now. I mean, we have standards behind it, we've got dollars behind it, and so then we're left with this little bit of a lag of, okay, now who's going to teach it? So how do we get teachers ramped up? Well, we can look at those endorsements through this online competency-based learning. Professional learning, that's a big deal for our districts. And some of our remote districts who maybe don't have the capacity or the ability to handle some of that intensive and that individualized professional learning. One of the great things about professional learning and professional development in Kentucky is that's a district decision. So they can craft their own if they like, and really tailor it to the specific needs of not only their districts, but their individual schools. And that's a great opportunity. Right now, professional development is not funded through the Flex Focus funds through our legislature, so districts are going to have to be more creative. Marty talked about all the districts are outfitted with high-speed fiber. They have those resources that they can capitalize on to develop better methods for professional development. And it's no secret when you talk to teachers about their best professional learning, they're going to tell you it was individualized. It was something I could use in my classroom right away. I remember as a principal, my math teacher was always saying, when are you going to give me something about math? And I never did. But now you can. That's something you can do through this ability to be so flexible. We look at, especially right now, and we're going to talk about our continuing education option. We're going to come back to this whole waiving of the masters and why this is important to us. But in Kentucky, we're going to be looking at the use of micro-credentialing as a part of the pathway to rank change. When you think about all these different terms floating around out there, we're going to be able to use micro-credentialing as a part of that curriculum and that path to ranking up. So we're seeing some of our EPPs start to develop micro-credentials in their master's programs as part of the curriculum. I will say I don't see us in the near future substituting micro-credentials for a degree, but I think we're certainly to a point to where those are going to become part and parcel of the pathway to one. And I think that makes sense, especially when they're done well. As we are trying to address a teacher shortage, there were 500 fewer students enrolled in our EPPs last year than there were the year before. It went from 4,800 to 4,300 in 1 year. We're going to have to get outside the box as we're trying to attract teachers into our classrooms. We're going to have to do some things differently. And with that, we're probably going to have to leverage some of this online individualized competency-based learning as we get our teachers ramped up and into the classroom. So I see that micro-credentials have huge potential in all of these areas in Kentucky for us. And very excited. And just want to shout out to KVAC for their leadership in this area in Kentucky. Working with Robert and Jennifer and Dr. Hawkins on this has really been a great experience for me. And I appreciate their leadership on this. And I think it comes, I think, to everyone's benefit in the room.
So we wanted to give two scenarios that we're thinking about and we're working on and we have some design elements towards. And then a third a third area that we've actually started to execute on and implement. And so one of the honors that I have at the Department of Ed is I also take care over our statewide library media work. And that's a new area for me, and I've learned a lot from our library leaders. Any librarians in the room? And so as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, I'll just quickly say that my library leader in the school that I learned to teach in taught me how to be a great teacher. And no one cares more about literacy than our library media leaders. And so this is an honor for me. But one of our scenarios, and Rob mentioned that we have a lot of thinking and a lot of work to get through, is that we have in every school the largest, and I'll plug in, and the best classroom in the school is most of the time in the library, right? That's the largest classroom in our schools. We have some regulatory language, some statutory language that gets at, in Kentucky, and if you're in Kentucky, you know this already, but we have every school needs to have access to a certified library media specialist in every school. So as it turns out in Kentucky, very different than other states that I've studied, and you've probably studied too, that in Kentucky we have 68% of our schools have a full-time certified library media specialist. That's a significant number, 68%. And so, however, 95% of those receive school library media certification as a master's degree, okay? So, rewind to what Rob shared earlier, that it's no longer a requirement to get a master's degree. So now we're looking at, as we move forward to the next 3 to 4 years, what does that look like for us? And so as we work with our higher ed partners to think about how many current teachers are in school library programs, which in Kentucky we only have 3 school library programs in the state. And so, and some of the leaders in the room, we've talked through this, and you've been a thought partner with me on this. But I'm really excited to think about this in new ways with our higher ed partners and how to develop a program. So this is a scenario. That's one scenario. A second scenario that Rob just shared as well is around computer science, and around the idea that we launched new academic standards for computer science. We knew that we needed to do that first. Second, we know that we have to focus on our teachers, and we want to make sure that we put processes in place and know that we have high quality computer science teachers. Currently today, math, middle school and high school certified teachers can teach computer sciences. However, that's only computer science courses that are tied to programming and algorithms, right? So in Kentucky, we've redefined computer science by way of our standards, our academic standards. And so that means something a bit different for us. And so our job is to investigate, and as Rob shared, we have some opportunity to look with all of our partners across the state and outside to how do we redevelop and launch a new activity to where we get more teachers, not just teaching computer sciences, but also teaching computer sciences well, right? So that's that next step.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about some innovation going on in Kentucky around our continuing education option. For years, that's option 2. Option 1 has been on the books for years, and it was basically a self-study kind of portfolio opportunity to gain your rank 2 with that. So I know we've used rank 2 and masters interchangeably, but for just the sake of clarity, a master's is a degree that you get from an EPP. It's portable. You can take it with you over state lines. A rank 2 is just a level up in Kentucky that you can earn through further professional learning. It'll get you a raise in Kentucky, and it is portable district to district, but it is not portable across state lines. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So we were operating under Regulation 16 KR 8030, which is our option for continuing learning and for rank change. And we saw that as an opportunity to expand beyond that self-directed, kind of home-based professional learning and expand it. And I'll also say, like the first week I was on the job, I got a call from Robert and said, we want to come up and talk to you about CEO. And that really got the ball rolling quickly for us once we waived the rank 2. And so I'm excited to share some of the opportunities with that. So let me give you a little primer on our timeline. Remember, it was August of 18 that we started, that we waived the requirement. So right now, the regulations in the public comment phase is that, which I believe has just ended. We are on, I think, right on track to be able to have this regulation ready in August. So from August to August to have a new regulation written, have the guidelines put together and ready to roll. We've been hustling pretty hard. And I think Dr. Lewis for keeping the pedal down on us so that we could get that going. We've convened work groups of our stakeholders. We've had local districts, co-ops, and EPPs at the table throughout this process, gathering input to make sure that what we put out there is of high quality. And our guidelines were just presented to the EPSB yesterday for a first read. So they'll go through for their second read in August, and we expect to start approving programs in August and October. So we're really excited about where we are in this process. Okay, so let me go through some of the required components, see if any of these support what you heard in the first session and what you heard Robert talking about as far as what needs to be present in good learning. So any program that is submitted, and again, these programs can be submitted by districts, they can be submitted by groups of districts or co-ops, cooperatives in Kentucky, or through educator prep providers. And so they have to be tied to the Kentucky teacher standards, and they have to demonstrate a connection to all of those teacher standards. So clearly, you're going to have something that is multi-level, and it's going to take a while to get through because it's going to require a demonstration of all of those standards. There has to be content exploration and research, student instruction and assessment, and professional development and publication. And we call that publication will be a capstone project for that. The focus on a professional growth need identified by the provider with consideration given to the identified needs of the school or the district as noted in their comprehensive school improvement plan. So it has to be something connected to the needs of either the district, the school, or the region. So we're very intentional on those guidelines because we don't just want to have, I think the word used earlier was fluff out there, for people being able to go through a program that is not going to benefit them as individual teachers, their kids, their school, their district, or their region. That's a really important point for us, and that's the lens by which our reviewers will be reviewing those programs. And I know that's kind of high level, but you've got to get through those pieces first before we're going to turn that loose for a rank change, because in Kentucky, I know it doesn't travel across lines, but that's going to guarantee a raise for a teacher, and that says that they have been through a higher level of professional learning, and it's time that advancement should show proof of higher student achievement in those classrooms. So with that, how much flexibility is there? A lot. When you think about where we went from teachers who went for their master's, having to go through a teacher leader master's program, having that prescribed, to having the opportunity to go to a tailored program based around a teacher's problem of practice, that is a game changer, or has the potential to be a game changer in Kentucky. How many of y'all were classroom teachers? Anybody ever leave a 6-hour PD and say, thank goodness that's over, I'm never going to have to use that again? Yes. Glad. Only one of us ever had that experience. Okay. Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. I can guarantee my teachers said that after some of mine. And part of that is because schools don't have the money to tailor and individualize all that professional learning. They're trying to kind of shotgun the approach to try to move the needle as best they can with all their teachers. I get that. I've been there. However, we have an opportunity now, and I will tell you as well, and don't raise your hands in here because we've got our EPPs in here, but did you ever go through a master's program and be like, that didn't do a whole lot for me in terms of student achievement? Keep those thoughts to yourself. So there's a great opportunity, and I keep using the word opportunity, but we have a great opportunity to make professional learning incentivized and meaningful for our teachers. What I like about our Rank 2 programs is that we have the opportunity and the ability to approve those through the EPSB. They do not have to go through a national accrediting or a regional accrediting body because there's no degree attached to it. So we're, like I said, very much in the infancy of this, but I cannot tell you how much excitement I have heard, especially from our cooperatives and districts around these opportunities to really grab a hold of that professional learning and be able to serve their populations. So some of the proposed models that are out there that I've really enjoyed talking through and serving as a thought partner with our partners, which is why you'd be a thought partner, of course, but self-contained districts. We have individual districts who are looking at this program as a recruitment, induction, and retention program. So think about this for a minute. You're out trying to recruit new teachers to your district, and you say, all right, I'm going to bring you in. We're going to use this. We're going to give you intensive professional learning around your specific professional growth plan and some of our district initiatives. We're going to support you through 2 to 3 years of this, and by the time we finish, you're going to have a raise, and it's not going to cost you a penny to do this, and we're going to give you a raise. And then after that, what a lot of the districts who are interested in this are doing, saying, we're going to support you through national boards if you choose to go through it, and then you can rank up yet again. So I see that as a great recruitment retention plan. When you think about new teachers leaving because having to take on debt or not feeling supportive or not feeling like they're getting the professional learning that they need to get better in their jobs, and we know that trajectory goes beyond 3 years now, this is really setting them up for great success. And the districts can have that ongoing personal touch, and they can adjust the needs of the learning to the needs of the teacher. So then we've got a couple of different cooperative models. In Kentucky, we have really strong educational cooperatives. They're regionally based. And we have some who are looking at basically doing the heavy lift for the districts, building the programs, and then kind of serving as a vendor or a third party to those districts, where the districts could say, we're not big enough to be able to do this on our own, but we want to do it ourselves. How can we do that? And so they create the programs. The districts will then take that and then apply and tell us how they're going to operate those programs. So it's kind of like buying a curriculum that they didn't have to build. We have some other cooperatives that are going to serve really as sole providers. They're going to build those programs, and then they're going to deliver those programs. And with that, they're going to have the wraparound mentoring support, and they're going to conduct that. And then we've got some potential out there for some EPP cooperative collaboration that I think could be really exciting as well. And this is, I know, a challenge to our EPPs, but this is also an opportunity to think differently about what kind of programs can we offer that maybe don't have to be accredited, that might serve as a pipeline into our graduate programs. How can we connect with and provide professional learning without it necessarily being a degree that can also open up the pathway to bring people into our programs?
And so, as we mentioned earlier, there's, the big idea, and Mary Ann mentioned this earlier as well, but the big idea about some online and digital opportunities. But one thing that I know Rob and Robin both have done a lot of coaching on is the collection of performances idea, and which is what I've tagged as the human side, the people side of how we're helping coach each other along and how we're connecting with the learning from a model perspective. And I like to call this the prove it model. So this is where we're able to demonstrate learning in some way, whether that's, I know a lot of programs do some video capture kind of things, but we demonstrate learning in some way, and we're able to prove it. And so that's An example of which, and again, and I'll keep touching on the two problems of practice that I mentioned, one being our library leaders and another being in our computer science space, which we're rapidly expanding. KVEC has been a leader in this, and so a shout out to KVEC to look at some of the prove-it models that are in place with Digital Promise and an opportunity for teachers to level up. Again, to go back to kind of the title of our talk this morning, but to level up and to build those skills on top of the certifications that they've already earned. And one model that we wanted to share, and again, the reason I love this is because the very first convening, Robert asked me to share some of our thinking because we had connected and talked about an idea. But this was one of our problems of practice as well. And it is what we termed as a human capital call to action. We have a people issue in our space of education technology where we're buying more technology and we're losing people. And so our gap is continuing to widen. Okay, so this was one of our problems of practice. Number one, we have to study and understand who we have and what we have and why we have, right? So we've had several superintendents, and it started 5 years ago, work with us and our Associate Commissioner David Couch and our Office of Education Technology to say, hey, I know how many teachers I need based on a formula. I know how many bus drivers I need based on routes. I have no idea how many people I need when it comes to effectively and maximizing the effective use of technology. I have no idea. Can you help us with that? So we employed a study, and one of our driving points from an ed tech leadership perspective is that we have to understand who we have, right? We have to understand who we're looking for, the roles of education technology that help us maximize the effective use. And again, this is just one example that we've been able to execute on, and we're really excited about it. So it's more than just a title. It's more than just the Chief Information Officer. We tag every school district in Kentucky has somebody identified as the ed tech leader, as the Chief Information Officer. And so looking at the old model, this was what we referred to, and you probably can't see that in back, but we'll make sure that everyone has this share if it's helpful. An instructional technology coordinator. And so this was any valid classroom certification would work. And so all that was good. But it helped produce and help expand our gap in terms of maximizing the effective use of technology. So our proposed new model is to make sure that we're looking at any valid classroom certification, right? Also, school leadership, supervisor of instruction, bachelor's degree or advanced degree in IT. So we're expanding that area. And by the way, in Kentucky, we have ed tech leaders who are maximizing on all of these certification requirements today. But then if you look over on the far right, you can't read that in back, I'm sure, but we've added our CIO Learning and Leadership Academy series, okay? So this is an online approach matched with a human touch or a coaching touch. And so this administrative regulation would get modified a bit as we move forward. And we want to ensure that this process that we put in place retains or gains, depending on the way that we view from an administration or administrative personnel perspective and supervisory perspective. So we're adjusting this district leadership position. This is not a classroom example like computer science or library leaders that I mentioned earlier. This is a district leadership example. And so in our study that we produced, and we put a lot of energy and effort into this, we identified these 6 pillars of ed tech leadership. And our idea was that if we could identify and make sure that we understand these 6 pillars of ed tech leadership, then we could help our leaders grow. And we could also help our district leaders and our school leaders identify the right types of folks to put in these positions, okay? And then we also went further to do a model calculation to say, here's how many people you need in these roles. And so from these 6 pillars of ed tech leadership, and I wanted to make sure to emphasize that this, if you want to call it a micro-credential, it's a competency or mastery-based approach, is built around what we want our leaders to know and be able to do in the education technology space. And so, great, absolutely awesome partnership with the University of Kentucky College of Education, Dr. Jerry Swan. I know Dr. Joan Mazur's in the room as well, I think. But this is a great partnership where we've put together a really solid approach to where we can pull these competencies in. The 6 pillars that I mentioned and that we pointed to from this study are represented in the work. So there are 6 modules. Guess what they match to? The 6 pillars of EdTech leadership. And so just to quickly walk through, we're able to have our EdTech leaders, and this is perfect, and it's been perfect over the last 6 months for our new EdTech leaders, brand new. So every year we have a rollover of anywhere from 10, and last year we had about 30 new EdTech leaders across the state. And so we'll work through these modules along with coaching from our field staff. If you're interested in this, we can deep dive on the side, but this is a great model that we're working through. Also, in this platform hosted by the University of Kentucky and the College of Education, we have a peer observation micro-credential, if you want to call it that. We also have many others that are starting to develop.
What I love about this example and the reason we pulled this in was I think it really shows kind of what we want to move towards. It's really aligned to the standards, specific needs that they identified and built the program around that. Well, that's what we want to see from our districts and our cooperatives about building these rank change programs. It doesn't get any more meaningful than that. You've got these new CIOs in Kentucky, many of whom are taking on jobs they think they know a little bit about, but they really don't know all the elements of it. And so they have filled that gap with some competency-based learning that is 1,000% directed toward the work they do. That is high value to the nth degree. And imagine being able to do more of that with our teachers and how much more engaging that will be for them to get exactly what they need. That is just a complete mind shift change for us, at least for me as a principal, to be able to think I could meet the needs of all my teachers through these programs, or as a district chief academic officer or professional learning director. So I'm really excited about this opportunity moving forward for our rank changes. And to be able to do that, we're going to have the ability to differentiate our instruction. And that's where the micro-credentials really fit in. And if you have high quality, show me type of learning through these programs, that's how we're going to be able to meet the needs of the individual teachers. It's not going to be going through, we've got a micro-credential on assessment that everybody in the district's going to do this year. That's probably not going to meet everybody's needs. So I know it's really at a point of kind of exponential growth when it comes to micro-credentials. I was out at NASDAQ, and I'm not going to spell it all out like everybody else has so far last week because I can't remember it yet. But NEA was there, and they talked about having 150 that they're rolling out that have been thoroughly vetted and ready to go. So we know that we're working with agencies and groups in Kentucky who are on the precipice of releasing several as well. So gets to this question that Marty has up here. How do we gauge quality assurance and rigor? And that's not an answer we have yet. I'm glad that's why we're convening here to talk about those things, because that is going to be the balance of how do we make sure that it is not fluff, that it's rigorous, and that it really delivers what we think it needs to.
So we'll be here all day. Thank you so much for your time and opportunity. We want to end with any questions that you might have for some of the ideas that we've shared. And we'll just pause for a minute to see if there are any questions. Yep. Get my workout in here.
Thanks, sir.
Robbie Fletcher, Superintendent of Lawrence County Schools. Allow me to frame the question first, and then I'll ask the question. A lot of times you go into if you're going to major in a certain field or major in a certain area, you go to a college. These are the classes that you have to take at the University of Kentucky. These are what you have to take at the University of Louisville, Morehead State, Eastern, so forth, so on. But those may not transfer back and forth. You may have these classes are only good for the University of Kentucky program. This is only good for the University of Louisville program. Well, the same thing I would ask that the KD would consider if you're given a rank change option, does the school district have the option of saying, you know, this isn't what we're looking for in Lawrence County. This is what the micro-credential bundles we want. This is what we think is the Lawrence County way. This is what we want to see. Well, you see this in a different district. So then do we have the option of saying, we don't recognize your rank change option because that's not something that goes along with our comprehensive district and school, improvement plan. Again, that might be a way of keeping teachers, and it might be something silly to do to say, hey, look, you're keeping teachers from coming to your district. But there is a possibility that you have a school district that has all these other micro-credentials or any other type of certifications that you really feel like is not something that you're looking for in your teachers. Thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's something we're going to have to think about, but the way that we've been considering the question so far has been like this. If you want to hire a phenomenal math teacher who comes to you and went through an online administrator program. You may not need another administrator, but they're a great teacher. Would you still hire them? That's kind of the thought. Now, if a teacher completes an EPSB approved rank change program through a district or a co-op, and they're granted that rank, then they do keep that rank. That travels with them. It comes down to, now you might be able to say in your district, I'm not going to give you another rank, but part of what you're going to do, because this is important to us, this is going to be part of your professional learning plan. We have these courses or these micro-credentials or these competencies that we want to see demonstrated, and part of you coming to work for us in Lawrence County is you're going to have 2 years to complete this. So you do have that leverage as well if you want to hire them in, but you feel like they're deficient in those areas. And that's where having the ability to provide that instruction on an individual basis is, I think, critical. So kind of a yes, no, and maybe altogether for your question. I think there's room there for a lot of those kinds of things. Yes, sir. He had a follow-up, I think.
I want to say something to his question as well. Okay. So, Dr. Fletcher, I think it's... Hi, everybody. Those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Wayne Lewis. I'm the commissioner at KDE. Great question. The comparison that you were making to courses in a program at University of Louisville versus courses at the University of Kentucky isn't quite the right comparison, and this is why. Once a teacher earns a master's degree from the University of Louisville, that is an approved rank change program. You don't have the ability to say whether or not you want to recognize that teacher for rank change. That's really the comparison point that you would make to completing an approved rank 2 program. So once you are rank 2 in Kentucky, you are rank 2 in Kentucky, regardless of school district. Now, like Rob is saying though, the decision point you have is at hiring. Just like you have somebody who's applying for a job who has a master's degree from the University of Louisville that's in an area that you said doesn't really fit where we're going in our district. We're not sure this is the right hire. Same place, same decision that you'd make with somebody with that program. One other related point I wanted to make though, how many of you by show of hands are from our colleges of teacher education? So we got a nice chunk. Here's what I want you to hear loud and clear from us. I don't want you to walk away from this conversation hearing KDE is busy trying to find alternatives to people earning master's degrees. That is not what I want you to hear. The master's degree is now and will continue to be an avenue that is sought by teachers for advancing their professional learning, for earning rank 2, right? What we are exploring is some alternative routes for teachers to be able to earn that rank too, that are equally as rigorous, equally as valid in terms of improving the quality of professional learning, and that can lead to outcomes in the classroom. We will continue to be major supporters, however, of teachers earning master's degrees. And here's one of the ways that I think the changes we're talking about impacts you. Many of you, and I came to Kentucky during this time when we were shutting down master's degree programs in areas like math education and in English education. I think some of the things that we want to do through the department and the board wants to do, the Professional Standards Board wants to do, is open up the flexibility for educator preparation programs to develop new and innovative master's degrees that are targeted at the skills and the type of learning that you want to happen in your classroom. So I don't at all want anybody to walk away from this conversation feeling like we don't believe in master's degrees or we don't believe in educator preparation programs. Not the case at all, and we'll continue to build those partnerships with you guys even further.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Probably a follow-up there would be, and not really a question, but just a comment, is if a teacher or an educator comes to your district with that change option already, then if you have something in your district where you're doing, what can you consider, go ahead and give the rank change, but for additional pay increase, say, okay, these 3 different micro-credentials is part of what we offer, and that could take you towards your next option that could be just specific to Lawrence County. You could still get a pay increase in Lawrence County for these classes, even though it may not be recognized once you leave Lawrence County. So that might be an option to look at. We recognize the change, of course we'd have to and we'd want to, because we want teachers to have to be compensated, but are there things that you took in maybe Barron County, Johnson County, that would qualify into what we looked at in our micro-credentialing or any type of licensure changes? So just an option there.
Yeah, absolutely. That, again, is a decision that you and your board can make to do, because the flexibility to pay teachers in between rank or to differentiate on their learning is very much the authority of you all to do. So, good point.